time for me to introduce our speaker for today, and when he accepted, I was so excited. I had just heard him speak at our Southern Division meeting down in Ontario last month. So I think I'd heard Mr. Greenfield speak once before, but when I heard him again with his message in Ontario, I just thought if I could get him out here to our club and get as many people in front of him as I could to hear his message, that we would all benefit from it. So, Mr. Greenfield is a fellow of the Claremont Institute, where he writes and lectures on U.S. foreign policy. He served in the Armed Forces and Naval Intelligence Reserves, and was publisher of the Journal of International Security Affairs. Mr. Greenfield has served the GOP as a member of the Executive Committee of the California Republican Party, as founding executive director of the Reagan Legacy Foundation, and as director of the Republican Jewish Coalition. He hails from Los Angeles and earned his BA at UC Berkeley and his law degree at the Georgetown University Law Center. Larry is going to share his thoughts with us today, and I'm really, really anxious to hear what he has to say with everything we've been through the last week. So his message, and what he's going to share with us, is the Republican agenda going forward. Mr. Larry Greenfield.
Hello, fellow Republicans. Thank you so much, Cheryl. Thank you for the kind invitation. Congratulations, Republicans, Republican Women Federated. Congratulations, office holders. I'm a fan of Congressman Cook's and also Mike Morell's up in Sacramento. And I applaud all of you for all the hard work. We're here at the Calamasa Country Club, a golf club, correct?
Right.
Great, I get to tell you the story of the priest, the minister, and the rabbi. It was just the three of them on a nice day, and they were playing golf at the Calamasa Golf Club. And they moved smartly down the front nine, just being three of them, and they came upon a foursome of golfers playing ahead of them. And they were very impressed to note that they were blind golfers. And the priest said, "Wonderful, impressive." And the minister said, "Take your time, we'll wait for you." And the rabbi called the fellow clergy over and he said, "You know, they could play at night." Well, they grew, not only their friendship, but they grew older together. And they wound up sharing the same hospital room, sort of at the end of their life, and the doctor came in with sad prognosis for all three of them, and he said, "I'd like to offer you some comfort and a final wish." And the priest said, "I'd like to be with my family at this time." And the doctor said, "Of course." And the minister said, "May I kindly have some private time in the chapel?" And the doctor said, "Of course." And then the rabbi just looked at the doctor, and the doctor just looked at the rabbi, and finally the doctor said, "Old man, what can I do for you?" And the rabbi said, "I'd like another doctor." "I'd like another doctor. Is there anything more American than that?" It's our choice, it's our lives, it's our responsibility, it's our opportunity to serve ourselves, our families, our communities, our nation, certainly our healthcare choices. And so the first item on the agenda for the Republican Congress, which we also toast a victory so that we don't have Charles Schumer, Harry Reid, well, he retired, but, right? Nancy Pelosi running the House? No. So the people brought us Obamacare in the dark of night by buying off the senator from Nebraska with the Cornhusker kickback, and Florida with the Gatorade, 2,700 pages that were not read, and Jonathan Gruber admitted, right, the architect of Obamacare, that the American people wouldn't know the difference, hadn't read it. Well, the American people know the difference. Higher premiums, less choice, a confused and difficult system with the exchanges. Doctors are not staying in practice. So the first item on the agenda will be reform and repeal Obamacare. And there's a great tradition of wanting to celebrate technology and progress and opportunity and invention and innovation in science and industry and discovery and, of course, medical technologies and devices. Speaking of presidential politics, James Garfield, a Republican Party leading light in the years following the Civil War, born in a log cabin, he became a college president, Union Army general, and congressman, all by the age of 32. Embodying the strive and succeed spirit that captured the imagination of Americans of his time, he was elected Republican president in 1880. It's no surprise that one of his biographers was Horatio Alger. Garfield's term in office, however, was tragically cut short just 4 months into his presidency in 1881. A would-be assassin approached him at the railroad station in D.C. and fired a single shot into his back. Garfield's further bad luck was to have his fate placed in the care of arrogant physicians who did not accept the new theory of antisepsis. Probing the wound with unwashed hands, Garfield's doctors introduced terrible infections and brought about his death 2 months later. A Republican hero, dead in 1881, shortly after his presidency began. In 1924, another Republican president, deeply beloved by Ronald Reagan, Calvin Coolidge. He had 2 sons who rushed out to play tennis on the White House tennis courts. 16-year-old Calvin Jr. did not put socks on, developed a blister on his toe, which became infected. The modern antibiotics that we have today would have easily treated his malady, but did not yet exist. Doctors arrived to find him suffering from pathogenic blood poisoning, and he died a week later, while Republican President Calvin Coolidge was in office. Healthcare, innovation, invention, the miracles of our age, blocked by democratic politics, partisan policy, which resists innovation, invention, personalized health care, and in fact capitalism, which lies behind the effort to work our way through treatments, devices, innovations that will serve all of us. Are we having any Dodger fans in the room? So, as it happens, the presidential election season fell right at the time of the Dodger playoff run. It was an exciting year. I'm a born and bred Dodger fan. I come from a small town just west of Calamasa, Los Angeles, California. So, it was the Jewish high holiday season, and I was reminded with the excitement of Vince Scully's last year calling the Dodgers, 67 years. What a great Christian Republican gentleman, by the way. He announced his final Dodger game with humility and honor and humor. Anyways, at the tribute, Sandy Koufax, 80 years old, came out and joined the tribute to Vince Scully. I was reminded when the Dodger star left-hander in the '65 World Series wanted to respect his Jewish holiday, Yom Kippur. So he switched starts with his fellow star, righty Don Drysdale, the beloved Don Drysdale. And Drysdale took the mound and promptly gave up 7 earned runs in 2 2/3 inning in the World Series game. But he had a little sly smile on his face as skipper Walter Alston approached the mound. Drysdale gave him the ball and he said, "Skip, I bet you wish I was Jewish today too." One more in the presidential election year. The great Babe Ruth was asked in 1930, I believe, why his salary was higher than that of the president. And he said, "I'm having a better year." I was in a lot of debates prior to the election, as I often am, inside and outside of the Jewish community, trying to make the case to a very liberal left community, trying to plead with them and impress them and beg them to open up their minds and hearts to the evidence, to facts, to the love affair between Republicans and Israel, and the brotherhood of Jews and Christians, and the simpatico and friendship among those who respect first principles, our Judeo-Christian civilization. George Washington, our first president, first in war, first in peace, first in hearts of his countrymen, wrote a letter to the Jewish communities of Savannah and Newport, Rhode Island, essentially saying, "Your God is our God," and affirming that brotherhood for all Americans, independent of their religious faith, that we are all here together, and in fact we built on the Judeo-Christian civilization that pre-existed the founding of America. If you go to your Old Testament, first 5 books of Moses, you'll see essentially a political philosophy in the Bible. There was for the first time a limited government of, by, and for the people. A bridge, a moderate middle between empire, Babylonian, Assyrian, Egyptian, and anarchy. The government in the text of the Old Testament, the Bible, is a government of, by, and for the people, a limited government. 400 years ago, settlers founded our great land, the New World. And they said, "We have found here a new Zion." And they modeled themselves off of the Exodus from Egypt. They were seeking religious liberty and escape from what they thought was tyranny in Europe. Patrick Henry, our great patriot, said, "We're doing here nothing less than Genesis, trying to start the world anew." Abraham Lincoln, the father of our Republican Party, built on the Liberty Party, said that Americans were essentially an almost chosen people. Abraham Lincoln, our second father, Abraham. The ties that bind the American soul and spirit to the great religious civilization that's at the root of Judeo-Christian ethics and politics are very deep. For 400 years, essentially, Americans from pulpits and in homes and on farms believed in restorationism, the return of the ancient Jewish people to their homeland. Only Barack Obama came along and breached that long tradition of moral, military, trade, travel, social, and religious alliance between Judeo-Christian America and Jewish civilization, Judeo-Christian civilization. Our founding fathers with names like Benjamin Franklin suggested that the escape from tyranny in Egypt should be the logo of the new United States. The author of the Bill of Rights, James Madison, had studied Hebrew and the scriptures at the College of New Jersey, later to be known as Princeton. As conservatives, we seek to conserve 5 founding first principles. Constitutionalism, not a living Constitution the actual text of the genius of the framers and founders. The head of the Common Law Department at my alma mater, the Georgetown University Law Center, has suggested we move away from the primacy of the U.S. Constitution. This should be a bipartisan concern, and there are some Democrats that we can make alliance to and explain that Barack Obama's significant overreach in his use of executive authority could come back to bite the Democrats once we get a Republican in office, which we've now done. Number two, economic liberty and property rights. Personal responsibility under a system of equality of opportunity, not of outcome. The Protestant work ethic is actually rooted in biblical principles of the individual made in God's image. We therefore become co-creators with God and are each responsible for the betterment of ourselves. Free market democratic capitalism, not crony capitalism, a la Solyndra, etc., that we've all learned is the Clinton legacy, is being challenged today by increasingly misguided socialism. The Democrats produced a Jewish candidate, I'm sorry to say, who won 22 state primaries as an avowed socialist. Satellites show Earth at night. They show the lights of South Korea and the darkness of North Korea. I think we all knew the difference between the glory and beauty of the democratic revolution in Central and Eastern Europe, led by President Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, and of course the people of the Czech Republic and the former Soviet Union, etc., Poland. We knew the difference between West Germany and East Germany. So did East Germans. That's partly why the wall came tumbling down. And we knew the difference between Miami and what JFK would have described as Cuba, 90 miles away. It's not hard to make an objective judgment about which society lifts up human beings by the millions. Free market societies do. Since 1790, the average GDP growth rate in the United States has been 4% per year. Mr. Obama oversaw 8 years with an average growth rate of 1.5%, the worst economic performance over 8 years in American history. Number three, freedom of conscience, religion, and speech. Increasingly opposed on campus from Yale, UCLA, by political correctness, indoctrination, intimidation, and illiberality. The Obama administration went after the Little Sisters of the Poor and the Hobby Lobby, seeking to redefine religious belief and liberty in our country. Our religious liberty, we believe, is not just personal, what you practice at home, but our religious institutions and businesses also merit freedom of conscience. What was done to Chick-fil-A, as an example. Democratic mayors across this country essentially sought to ban a business which of course welcomes anybody through their doors because they didn't like the personal political beliefs of the proprietor, the owner of Chick-fil-A. What was done to a waitress in Los Angeles, intimidating her. Or the head of Firefox who dared express his point of view on Prop 22. I suggest you don't get fired in this country for being a conservative. Journalists gathered under Barack Obama to spin the news of the day. They had a formal, organized effort, not to be objective, but to present a bias. I'm going to reference a few books that I think you might enjoy.
Kirsten Powers, How the Left is Killing Free Speech. Kim Strassel, The Intimidation Game. Bernie Goldberg's book, Bias. And Guy Benson, End of Discussion. I'm sorry I'm not feeling well today. I have something to share with you. Last week I was a kidney donor. Yes, thank you. I'm doing just fine, in fact 100%, but this is my first day sort of standing up, so forgive me for just a moment of catching my breath. I have a very close friend, he's very ill. We went through 11 months at the UCLA Medical Center. I could not be his direct donor, we're not a blood match. But by giving a kidney into a chain, he gets a kidney. Last night we found out that he gets one soon, on the 29th of this month after Thanksgiving. So I'm overwhelmed with gratitude on lots of levels to be with you in health, to know my friend will be saved, to know that actually my direct kidney donation worked for a gentleman who was on dialysis and doomed. A lot of blessings in my life right now, and I'll never forget being with you because this is my recovery day, so thank you for that. Thank you again. Number 4, the defense of freedom. This is my area of passion and commitment. Mr. Obama, who never wore the uniform of the armed forces, called our brave Marines corpsmen, and was totally unprepared to be commander-in-chief. He asserted he was a citizen of the world and set up a retreat of American leadership in a dangerous world. The Obama doctrine was hug thugs and offend our friends. On one issue, for example, human rights, an area where we're able to move some liberals our way, and explain to them that the Republicans of the party carry on human rights and standards and opposing tyranny and liberation. A letter was sent to Barack Obama early in his first term, signed by Lech Walesa and Václav Havel and 22 heroes of freedom in Central and Eastern Europe, who begged him not to forsake them or rush away from missile defense during our reset with Putin's Russia. Mrs. Clinton's, Mr. Obama ignored the letter, of course. Mrs. Clinton's record was no better. She blocked the State Department from putting Boko Haram, the Nigerian kidnappers of the girls, from the list of international sponsors of terrorism, in order to foster the case that with the killing of bin Laden, the war on terror was over and no more threat from jihad. Mr. Trump is going to reverse Mrs. Clinton's policy, for example, which overthrew Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. At that point, our erstwhile ally, Obama consistently, Clinton-Obama doctrine, ignored Congress and set international foreign affairs and security policy. They turned Libya into a breeding ground for Islamist terror. They've not told the truth about Islamism, radical Islam. The Fort Hood massacre here was not workplace violence, it was jihad. Our nuclear policy has been sent by the president, the current president, to the UN. The nuclear arms race has been launched in the Middle East with the awful Iran deal. Why would Mr. Obama side not with the dissidents and freedom fighters in Tehran? Remember Neda, who bled to death in the streets, June of 2009? Why would he do the same with Cuba? We got nothing for his recognizing the communist government of Cuba. I'm not going to go to Cuba and give money to their dictatorship. When they're a free Cuba, I'll be glad to visit. Until then, I'm not going. Our military preparedness has been declining fast in terms of troop levels, ships, tanks, and planes. Our rules of engagement do not allow our troops to go after the enemy in a concerted way. What will happen different? What's the Republican agenda going forward? A reversal of all this. We're going to build up our military might and presence in the world. We're going to tell the truth about the enemy. We're going to stand by allies. We're going to be resolute in the war on terror. That's the big difference between Obama and Mr. Trump. Hopefully safe zones will be created for refugees and they won't have to flood into Europe in their numbers. Pity these poor nurses in hospitals in Germany and France and England. Millions of refugees come in with, by the way, exotic and different diseases and problems that they're not prepared for, and heroically they try to grapple with to be of service, and they're abused by these refugees who are unvetted, and are bullies, and mock Christians and secular even people, non-Muslims, the kafirs, right? Very concerning human rights challenge in Europe. Excuse me. And finally, number 5, accountable government, or what we call the public trust. 2016 was the year of revolt against the elites and failed governments and insider corruption and what we call government gone wild. The political class in DC failed the people. 6 of the 8 richest counties in our country now surround Washington, D.C. The Democrats have not been public servants. They've been pigs at the trough. They've been bankrupting our future, failing to organize reasonable entitlement reform, and I promise you, planting the seeds of a debt crisis that's going to change the standard of living of everybody in this room and our kids and grandkids. The GOP revolution was long in coming. The Tea Party, the defeat of Majority Leader Cantor, the rise of Ron and Rand Paul, inside the GOP was a revolution and Tea Party brewing, and the rebels won. The Democrats too saw voices of revolt. I could say revolting voices, but I won't say that. The recall of Greg Davis here in California was but one example. They too had a rebellion, but the empire fought off the rebels in the Democratic Party. Brexit was our tip-off that something miraculous was happening in the hearts and minds of average people, the average folk. And instead of denigrating it, like the Democrats did, Republicans took a lesson from it. Why should a farmer in Britain have to take demands from a bureaucrat, a socialist in Brussels, about what crops to grow? Why should the countries of Europe today have to listen to the socialists in Brussels about how many unvetted refugees they each take in? England redeclared its own independence. And Americans have taken their country back. The Democrat response to not even the partisan, just the honest concerns of the American people about what is happening in our country, morally, civically. You can't raise your hand on a college campus and offer a conservative thought without fear of your grades. The press is all lopsided and biased and unfair in their reportage. Academics are going to spend 50 years of their lives cocooned in sociology departments and archaeology and English and history and not interested in engaging ideas they don't agree with and growing therefore, but just safely in their safe spaces with pet therapy. If God forbid somebody says a Republican idea, a conservative idea, a first principles idea, average Americans, including, by the way, God bless them, Reagan Democrats, and are just hardworking folk in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin, just decided the Democrats, calling them bitter clingers to their guns and religion, or lay deplorables, enough is enough. Do you hear the people sing now, Democrats? Sacramento is its own story. In 2 tanks of gas, you can drive yourself to the north part of our state. The North State. Not the Bay Area, what we call Northern California, but the whole third of the state above the Bay Area. The North State. Farmers, ranchers, water, mining, timber, agriculture. Our fellow Californians are in trouble. And it's Sacramento's fault. Their industries have been destroyed. And the attendant social malaise and family abuse, etc., is quite stark. If you have a heart for your fellow Californians, you can drive there and be there by nightfall. Please continue to push Sacramento to get more realistic about their bullying and their bias in their one-party state. The drought that they brought our state, that's man-made droughts. Failure to provide the storage reservoirs to capture the runoff, diversion of water to the sea, that's just one example. And lastly, on the social issues, in addition to the economic ones and the national security ones, there is a war on women. It's Islamist. Republican women, you have the best opportunity and the biggest responsibility. Republican women, you are our leaders, there's no question. That's not pandering. Ask any Republican in this state or in this country. You are the leaders, because men are voting Republican. Women, close call, about 50-50 now. Mr. Trump won by 10 or 12 or 15 points among men, but it was very close among women. And the Democrats win among single women. Bad for me, I'm single, but what do you do? It's a long journey to romantic heaven. Okay. That's my problem. Republican women, I know you have these projects, but I encourage you and I compliment you. Please double down on your efforts to find high school women, junior high school young ladies, high school young ladies, and welcome them in and befriend them and show them the light. Why this country is fair-minded. Why this country does admire and support and lift up its women. This is in the heart of Republican men. And I would say something similar about race, and I'll close with this, and we'll have a chance for a little Q&A if there's time. Millions and millions and millions of Americans celebrate the great Dodger, Jackie Robinson. Every April 15th is Jackie Robinson Day. The man who broke the color barrier in baseball and essentially sports. His number 42 is the only number retired in all of sports. It's a smear against our country to say we have a big race problem. Every day in this state of California, we work and play and shop and pray and live with and talk with and conduct commerce with people of all races, creeds, and colors and faiths. Is that not true?
Yes, it's true.
If you shop, if you go to the pool, if you go to the park, if you pet your puppy, I mean, nobody looks at the color of your skin when you play with the dog at the park. The protest movement, the blocking of freeways, the riots, the smear, the ginning up of America and Americans against each other under race, class, and gender ideas. This is not Americans, it's not conservative, it's not the American way, it's not what's in the hearts of Republicans. Our party has nothing to be ashamed of course, you know this. We're the party of liberty, they're the party of slavery, and Jim Crow, and the KKK, and anti-civil rights in the 1860s and the 1960s. We believe in colorblind and the content of your character. They are stuck in the radicalism of seeing the color of your skin through their eyes. So on these social issues, we have nothing to be apologetic for, everything to be proud about. The only colors we care about are red, white, and blue. And these colors don't run. And the color green, meaning opportunity for everybody to make their way to the American dream. I'm so happy to be with you. You were graciously patient with me with my cough. I'm still standing and I'm happy to take some questions and answers. Thank you. The question was, are the Democrats potentially going to choose Congressman Keith Ellison as the head of the Democratic National Committee? I guess he would have both jobs, congressman and head of the DNC. Like the so effective Debbie Wasserman Schultz did. So the last two heads of the DNC are Debbie Wasserman Schultz, a left-wing Jew from Florida, a very antagonistic person, who was not effective in her job. How did she do? During her tenure, along with Barack Obama, the Democrats fell from control of the House and Senate to collapse, from many governors down to 15 out of 50. Republicans control 69 out of 99 state legislators. The reason there's 99 out of 100 is because Nebraska is unicameral, there's only one. We got 70% of the state legislatures, 68% of the governorships. We control the Senate and the House, and now the White House. Good job, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. By the way, in the pocket of Hillary Clinton, she went after Bernie Sanders and, of course, played the Jew card against him. Tried to make Democrats not vote for Bernie Sanders because he was Jewish. That didn't get too well reported by the press. That's today's Democratic Party. And then the next Democratic chair, after Debbie Wasserman Schultz got booted, was Donna Brazile, who put her thumb on the scale and lied about, after having been caught, that she gave the answers, meaning the questions, to Hillary Clinton in her debate against Bernie Sanders on CNN, the debate. So she's going to be booted. And now the question is, might they pick a Muslim American congressman? He's a convert to Islam, Keith Ellison. When he took the oath of office the first time, he swore on the Quran, not the Bible. Okay, under the First Amendment, I guess you have the right to choose your religious practice, okay? And, choose your God. However, I will say this. When Barack Obama said that Muslims were integral in the founding of America, of course he made that up. Both John Adams and Thomas Jefferson did have Qurans in their libraries that were well worn and underlined. Why? Because they were at war with the Barbary pirate Muslims. The birth of the U.S. Navy was all about fighting off the Muslim piracy off the Libyan coast of Tripoli. Are we a nation for all? Yes. Are you invited to have any First Amendment religious beliefs you want? Yes. Is there any religious test for office in this country? No. But we saw with Barack Obama the consequences of somebody who didn't believe in American exceptionalism and didn't believe we were a Judeo-Christian civilization. If the Democrats want to pick Mr. Ellison, that's a bed they'll have to sleep in. I don't suggest that'll be likely a successful choice by the Democrats. Are there any other? Yes. Okay, now this is also a good question. What do we do about Sharia law? Sharia law is not prioritizing the Constitution of the United States as the law of the land. Sharia law asserts that the religious civilization and laws of the Quran would be the law of the land. Therefore, Sharia law would be inconsistent with constitutional republicanism. Therefore, I oppose Sharia law in the United States of America. You may in your home practice any religious beliefs you wish, although even there are some limits. Then the courts and the law might have the right to say Yes, you have freedom of religion and conscience, but we have certain standards of care for every human being in this country. You may not deny your child the right to medical care. Or we are Indian Americans, we have a certain belief system, we want to take peyote. Well, the local law and the state law might have some rules about drug use. So there are some compromises we all make, you understand, about religious belief and practice in any society that wants to be cohesive and safe and secure. But there's no problem with Muslims being in the United States. There's no problem with them being great Americans. There is a problem if they would say, we don't affirm and pledge allegiance to the Constitution of the United States of America. That would be a problem for me. Are you with me?
Yes.
I don't think many Muslims have a problem with that statement. I would hope not. There's no religious test for office, but if you don't swear on the Constitution of the United States and some other body of law rules over your life, well then you're not the same kind of American the rest of us are. Yes. One or two more? Yes.
Senator Boxer in Illinois wants to eliminate the number of
There once upon a time was a senator from California named Barbara Boxer. It's now almost a distant memory for me. Two Jewish U.S. senators from California, Barbara Boxer and Dianne Feinstein. Oh, I wish instead our names of our senators were Bruce Richardson and Dennis Prager. What can I say? The Electoral College is a magnificent idea, as are almost all the ideas in the framing and founding of our country. The idea is that we don't really want the Democrats to open up borders and offer sanctuary cities and bring in everybody who, of course, come from, let's say, from South and Central America, less than free democratic republics. And then they dominate the political bloc. And then the candidates would only appeal to them and only campaign in Brentwood, California, Santa Monica, California, right? West Hollywood, California. They're very nice in West Hollywood, California. Once a year I go to have supper maybe. The parking is awful, they don't get my business. Sorry, West Hollywood, California. Yes, the Electoral College is very meaningful because just like the U.S. Senate, it says that the big states may not bully the little states. The little states each get 2 senators. Theoretically, that's unfair. Why should California have the same number of U.S. senators as Wyoming? Because the geniuses who founded our country said there are values and interests in all parts and regions of our country, and they need to be equally represented. And you don't just get to win because you have more people. So, sorry, Babs Boxer, you're going to lose that one too. Is that it today? Yes, last.
Well, I want to make a little correction here.
Yes.
As a chaplain in the United States Army retired,
Yes.
and a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, Seventh-day Adventists do not refuse medical
Yes.
care for their people. In fact, we have a huge medical center right here close, and one of the largest medical system in any certain denomination. So I'm not sure where you got that information.
I'm glad you told that, so let me explain the clarification. You said Seventh-day Adventists do not deny their children any medical care. There's a famous court case from many, many years ago, which was the case I referenced. But obviously today, there's no problem. Listen, I'm not the most electrifying observer of all religious beliefs. My rabbi called them Seventh-day Absentists. He didn't know too much either. But I'll say it's the Jews who actually are the ones who betrayed a more faithful observance to the great traditions. The Orthodox Jewish community is only 10% of America. They are the ones who are most constitution-oriented and text-oriented and Bible-oriented and faithful to Israel and to America's security and defense. The other 90% of American Jews, I've got a little more work to do on them, God bless them, to get them to see the light. And to see the light means to be more brotherly about the Jewish-Christian alliance and brotherhood that I referenced earlier. I mentioned Dennis Prager. He was once on a plane ride, and he was with a lady, and he could tell she didn't really know how many Jews there were in the United States. She said, well, Protestant, Catholic, Jew, 300 million Americans, there must be 100 million Jews in the United States. And he said, no, there's only 6 million, dear lady. She said, huh, they must all live near me in Kentucky. Have me back in a year. I have a book underway. We'll talk more about Jewish-Christian Alliance and about our progress in moving the Jewish community into the Republican column. Thank you so much for having me. God bless you.